Throughout history, there have been few handguns that have developed legendary status. Handguns that have become renowned worldwide for their accuracy, reliability, and form factor. But I don't own any of those, so let's talk about this Glock. If when you were a kid you ever drew a picture of a policeman, you probably drew him with something like this. In which case, congratulations. You drew a perfect representation of a Glock pistol. Give yourself a pat on the back. The Glock series of pistols are ubiquitous with law enforcement agencies across the country. And for good reason. They're reliable, simple, and easy to pick up and train for new shooters. If you're new to guns or new to Glocks, this video is simply intended to serve as an introduction to the basic features that Glocks have. Now, if you don't like Glocks, that's okay. And you don't need to tell me about how your great-granddad's Nambu pistol he smuggled out of a POW camp in World War II has a better trigger. But at least I know that my gun wasn't stashed in somebody's rectum. Or at least, somebody else's rectum. Anyways, let's start from the bottom and talk about the magazine. The Glock 17 is chambered in 9mm, which, contrary to popular belief, is not capable of blowing the lungs out of a person's body. 9mm is the most widely used handgun caliber on Earth. It offers the best of both worlds in terms of power and size. It lets you carry a relatively large amount of ammunition while still being perfectly capable of incapacitating a target with a well-placed shot. The ammo is fed into and through the standard Glock magazine. The Glock 17 that I have here holds 17+1. If you notice here, the magazine well of the Glock 17 is beveled a little bit. This makes it easier to load a new magazine into the gun without needing to look down and make sure that you're putting the mag in at exactly the right angle. Now, this is especially useful for when you're trying to reload quickly or under stressful conditions. Although, let's be honest, we both know that the most stressful thing you'll be doing with this gun is trying to find a good spot to hide it from your mom when she finally kicks down the basement door and hauls your Genshin Impact playing ass out of her house. And don't hide it in your Mona body pillow, even though it conveniently already has a hole cut into it, because that's going to be the first place she'll look, trust me. Moving on to the frame. The Glock 17 has a polymer frame, and for those of you that don't science good, polymer just means that the frame is made mostly from a high-strength plastic. Some older gun owners, or FUDs as they are lovingly known, refer to polymer-framed pistols as Tupperware guns. But don't let this fool you. Glocks are not recommended for food storage. The oil makes everything taste funny, and it keeps making lightning in my microwave. FUDs just like to demean polymer-framed guns because they've convinced themselves that when you pull the trigger on a .45 ACP, a small nuclear fusion reaction occurs inside the cartridge, and anything less than a steel frame 1911 will blow apart from the sheer force. Moving on to the grip itself, the Glock 17 Gen 5 that I have here has removed the finger grooves that were present on the Gen 4. Now, there has been some debate about this, but personally, I prefer a smooth grip. If you're like me and you have the long, thin, beautiful fingers of a concerto violinist, then you'll appreciate not having your knuckles rub into the hard plastic finger grooves. Next up, we have the stippling on the grip. Now, this is the stuff that actually creates friction between your hand and the gun itself. It's a little bit subtle and it won't tear your hand up too much, which is great unless you plan on doing some serious work with this thing. Under wet weather conditions, or if you're cold and you can't feel your fingers, the stippling on the grip won't actually provide that much grip. I can recall at least one occasion where I was shooting in the rain and almost had the gun slip right out of my hands. Over here we have what's known as the magazine release. It's pretty standard. It's in a good location and it's a good size, so you don't miss it when you need a new magazine, and you don't hit it on accident when you're practicing tactical reloads for when you get jumped in the Chili's parking lot after going alone and packing away a party platter of Big Mouth bites. I also like the little thumb groove right next to the mag release. It helps you keep your hand in the proper shooting position, and it also helps guide your thumb to the release when you need it. The mag release, as well as the slide release, are ambidextrous, so for those of you out there that God doesn't love, at least Gaston Glock's got your back. Moving on to the trigger. You may notice that this gun doesn't have a safety, and that's kind of true. Glocks use what's called safe action. And although they don't put a physical safety lever on the frame or the slide of the gun itself, to keep things simple, these three safeties are all located within the gun itself and are designed to keep the gun from firing until the user pulls the trigger. The safety is actually located on the trigger itself. You pull this lever, and the safeties disengage, and the weapon is ready to fire. For some, the thought of not having a conventional safety makes them nervous. But to those people I ask, why be nervous? You're following all the rules of firearm safety at all times, aren't you? Anyways, the point is, don't pull the trigger unless you want a bullet in something. If you can't handle that level of responsibility, buy a dog or a kid or something. Now, once you've disengaged the safety, you'll start to pull the actual trigger. This is the part where Glocks get most of their bad reputation. To put it simply, Glock triggers suck. The break on a Glock trigger feels like cracking your knuckles underwater. But don't be discouraged. While yes, there are many better triggers out there, Glock triggers are still perfectly capable of letting you make accurate and quick shots at range. If you want something nicer, you can always switch it out with an aftermarket one. Over here at the front of the gun, we have what's called a Picatinny mount. This lets you mount all sorts of stuff like lights and lasers, which is massively useful for shooting under low light conditions. Alright, last but certainly not least, let's talk about the sights. Now, I'll be honest, stock Glock sights give me diarrhea. Now, fortunately for me and my anus, my gun came with night sights. Not only do they not make my eyeballs want to jump into a deep fryer, they also glow in the dark, which is fucking sick. Now, stock sights do the trick, I suppose, but honestly, as much as I love Glocks, I just can't stand to look through those awful sights. And if there's one thing on this gun that would turn you off to buying it, it would be the sights. So let's bring this baby to a close. And if you take nothing else away from this video, take this. The Glock series of pistols, not just the 17, are some of the hardiest, sturdiest, and most reliable, and most bang for your buck weapons on the market. No, they're not pretty to look at, and a nice paint job would do them some justice. And no, they don't have the best triggers or the comfiest grips. But what they do have is versatility. The aftermarket selection available to the consumer is insane. Every single part of the gun can be swapped out to fit your particular needs. You may hear people say that Glocks are shitty guns because the people that own them swap out all the parts, but the same can be said about AR-15s and everybody loves those things. Anyways, I just hope that I helped you understand the basics of the Glock 17, and if you're thinking of getting one, I say go for it. Whether it's your first gun or your 100th, a Glock will do great things for you. But don't just take my word for it. Try it out for yourself and let me know what you think. Do you agree with me, or am I full of shit? Either way, I'll still be here making videos for you guys. I just hope I can pull more people into the gun culture and get more people on board with our passion. Why bicker about things that shouldn't matter when we can rejoice over the things that we all love? Anyways, I'd like to close this video with a quote from former President George W. Bush.
I know the human being and fish can coexist peacefully.